Builder. Actually, that's not Buildy, that's the sun. I don't know if you can see, but there's one of those circular rainbows around the sun today. I don't know if that's coming out. Might be wasting your time. But yeah, it's a circle of rainbow around the sun. Pretty cool. I think it's a natural phenomenon. It doesn't have anything to do with sexuality either. So that's nice to know. Just thought I'd make sure. Anyway, I touched a little bit on building a homestead communities, organizing with other people to try to control your political environment in space, geographically located space that you can have, that you can control. Geopolitics, that's important and can be on a very small scale. The biggest obstacle that you'll have to doing anything is going to be regulation, and regulation, as we all know, is controlled in most places by corporations, and they're designed for their profit. Got to learn how to fight that, and you can fight it. It can be done. You have to have a group of people and organize. You have to have some resources. Now, cool things that I've seen people do as far as building a community goes, and I don't know how hard this is to do anymore in America. There's places where you can get her done. Abandoned property, right? Industrial abandoned property. Outside the cities and small towns, there's factories and schools, big school systems that abandon their buildings. It's not worth repairing. We're gonna get a big, multi-million-dollar grant and build a new one. And I've seen schools for sale in the Midwest. Big, huge buildings made out of brick. Not too old either, really. Stuff like that is a resource. They're probably not going to let you fix it up and live in it, but you can dismantle it and get a lot of bricks and girders and all kinds of resources and materials and build something else next to it. They want to hire contractors to go in with tractors and tear it all up and haul it to a landfill. They don't want somebody dismantling it. They want to give you a time limit and stuff like that. There's no reason for any of that, and it's going to have to be a thing of the past. We can't live like that anymore. Governments, hopefully, they'll run out of money, but unfortunately, you'll run out of money before they do, and they'll still be trying to regulate you. That's why it's important to form communities and go after them politically and make them listen to reason and replace them if they won't. There's a lot of ways you can leverage that, but we'll talk about that later. A bunch of people pooling their money and resources and finding abandoned property big enough where they can all live there and build their own little places and have them networked where they share certain resources, where they strengthen and accentuate each other. Everybody's doing their own little thing there. You've got mechanics and you got welders and you got gardeners and you got people who make lunch for everybody when they're all working together, like an Amish community. It's a beautiful thing. The main thing that'll stop you from doing that is your regulations and your ordinances. Picks up. I hope you can still hear me. But you can overcome these things, but you have to fight. You have to do it. You have to be organized to do that. Some places it's beautiful. You can walk in. You can find places that are just regular jewels where you have some people that solve a lot of problems for our community if you go in there and clean this place up. It's okay. You can have all the time you want. Pull all them bricks out. Clean them off. Do something with them. Pull all this material out. But then you get a lot of places that got a bunch of Karens in charge and they want to put a time limit on everything because she's probably got a cousin that's a contractor and they want to give him a contract and pay him to tear it down. But if you get some property to reclaim, some abandoned property, or it's got piles of stuff on it like this here, it's like an old walkway they're pulling out. They're starting to redo things here slowly. You hear a backhoe working. It's down the hill. It's working on that berm they're putting up, or whatever it is, the long concrete wall. But you have to have something to replace it with. All these bureaucrats, they got to be satisfied that you're not going to put a pig farm next to the restaurant. Okay, first off, you got to have a Bill of Rights. You need to be treated with respect and dignity. And they talk to you like you're 3 freaking years old, and they have to wade in there and keep you from doing things because you might do something stupid to hurt people. No, that's got to stop. You got to stop them from doing that. You have the right not to be talked to and treated like that. You're no worse than they are. They're no better than you are. In fact, they live on your tax money in a very parasitic relationship. Yeah. You gotta get this stuff ready for them. And if they adjourn the meeting when you say stuff like that, even if you're polite about it, or you put forth the proposition that you have rights, and they call the sheriff in to haul you off, well, you need to start working on the sheriff. You need to get your tentacles in everywhere and get control of your environment. If you don't have control of your environment, you're not going to do very good. You're not going to be able to do anything. You can do this. It can be done. It has been done. Reclaiming a large industrial site. Gravel pits are great. Abandoned gravel pits. You could put a real fun community in for people in one of those, but they won't let you. You got to make it so they freaking let you. Hopefully some of these small governments will run out of money and won't be able to enforce anything anyway. But then they're going to want to move in the corporate people and the UN and all that and manage it and just get you out of there so they can lock it all up. No, ain't gonna let them do it. And you can have regulations. You do need some regulations. I love air power. Air power, wind powering an air compressor is a beautiful thing. You could have some huge tanks, old industrial tanks. You can test them yourself with a pressure washer and water. It's not difficult. You can make absolutely certain they're not going to blow if you put 175 psi in them. And then you can run pipes to everybody's house and they have free air power. And there's a lot of things you can do with it. You can make electricity with it. You can run a blender. You can run a fan. Everybody can have their own reservoir that the pipe runs to, and they tap off their own reservoir. It could be a system, or everybody can have an individual system. You don't want a bunch of windmills in the ground, up in the air though. And it only takes one if you got a lot of wind. You can supply air to a lot of people. You can do a lot of work with it with air tools. You can make tiles, you can make stone. You can make bricks, you can make compressed earth blocks, you can make all kinds of building materials and build your community. Why do they want to stop you? It's none of their freaking business. You gotta fight them politically. Okay, for example, I was talking about zoning. If you have a windmill, they're very dangerous. You have to have a foiling system to slow it down or stop it if the wind gets too high, because they will go so fast that the centrifugal forces will make your propeller disintegrate. And if you got a big heavy wooden propeller and you got a neighbor 100 yards away, you might end up with some wood slivers going through his house. That's not optimal. There's ways around that. Your 360 degree rotation of gyroscopic plane. So wherever that happens to be in the high wind, and if it's over speeding, it'll disintegrate, and there'll be a wedge-shaped scatter field on both sides of it where it's a danger zone. And if you have heavy prop pieces that come apart, or maybe a whole blade comes off and it weighs 6 pounds because it's made out of oak, it's not good. that wedge is going to go way out there, and it's a potential of destroying somebody or somebody's property. So you do have to have regulations. If there's anybody around that geoscopic plane, which is 360 degrees around your windmill, there's a little bit of danger. If you need to have a really good foolproof foiling system, and it probably needs to be inspected by other people on a basis, on a regular basis, because people get lazy and they don't want to climb up there and look at everything, and it goes haywire and a windstorm comes, and then you got a board going through your neighbor's house. Worst case scenario. It's a very slim possibility. You got a bunch of stacks of statistics on there that say it's probably not going to happen, but you don't want it to happen. One alternative is mandating, if you're in a neighborhood, lightweight blades made out of a certain material. You'll have to replace them more often, but they do last. If it's lightweight, it doesn't go very far. When it centrifugally comes apart, the air pressure stops them from going very far. If they do hit something by, it's going to be a small lightweight fragment. It's just going to put a blister on them or something. But yeah, I'm talking worst case scenario here. Foiling devices, air brakes. If you got an air system anyway, you got a system where you have to have air for it to flow. And if you get to high wind, an air brake comes on and stops it, or flips the rudder around and makes it foil itself and stop. There's lots of ways to do it. It needs to be intact. It needs to be inspected. If you live around a windmill, you know, you might want to keep an eye on it, maybe even inquire as to things. If it's going to be unsafe for your property. These big commercial windmills they put up, the wind generators that the corporations do, well, they don't worry about that. They have them right up close to people's property. I've seen them close to towns. Those things, you ever see the videos of those things flying apart? When they fail, when they go haywire? There's not a big uproar about it though, is it? Oh, they're dangerous, we have to stop them. No, they only do that when you have a windmill. A big corporation has one that is absolutely dangerous as all get out if it's around anybody's property. Those things will throw pieces a long ways off. And they're a boondoggle and a tax farm anyway. But you don't touch them. Oh, they're green, we're saving the earth. You do it, and oh, it's a danger to the community, we can't let you do that. Yeah, see how it works? You got to expose that and you got to go after it. You got to have a Bill of Rights. Anyway, regulations damage people's property more than the stuff that they try to regulate. They damage your property if you can't use it. That's damage. That's real damage. And it probably held up in the court of law too. There's no reason for most of this stuff. I got to look at my notes. I'm going to try to make some points on this one. I'll just go till the battery runs out or the memory gets full, and then we'll do a part 2 probably. You could solicit projects. You can put, there should be platforms on the web to do this. There probably is. I just haven't really looked for them that much. Bear Trail, that'd be a good place to do it. Find a group of people that want to live in a community and build your own stuff, homestead, farm, have alternative energy, be as self-sufficient as possible. Get yourselves together, get a money pool together, find some property. People can sell the stuff they don't need, pool your money and go for it. You can buy an old industrial property or abandoned properties. There's subdivisions I've seen on the north side of Houston and the west end of Houston, outside the city, where they laid out all these houses and poured all these slabs and foundations, and then, well, 2008 hit, or actually before that, they had a decline in the economy, so they just abandoned them, and they're still sitting there. Nobody made them clean them up. Nobody made them pay damage. It's a big corporation. They don't have to. But, you know, you better not have something like that in your backyard, or they're coming after you, buddy. You're destroying the environment. You see how it works? But there's these places with just forest regrowing with these abandoned foundations everywhere that nobody does anything about. Who owns it? Well, probably still the company that did it, or the banks. Maybe the government took over. And find out if you can buy it. You can use these foundations. You can inspect them and see if you can do something with them. Might not be for a house, but they could be for other things. And you can build a community in a place like that. It's a lot of land. Everybody could do their own thing, but you have to not get variances. Getting variances is asking the system permission for you to have your rights. No, you got to revamp the system. Might be a good time to do it pretty soon when they run out of money or they have too much going on. You need to put your ideology together. You need to have a Bill of Rights. What should regulations look like? Well, like I just said, safety, something dynamic and potentially very dangerous and catastrophically dangerous for like a large windmill. That might be an issue. For inspection, regular inspection, and some regulation. The density and design of the prop and the foiling system and brake system should be not dictated. It's just got to work. It's got to work. It should be as simple as possible and work. If it can be simplified and still work, it needs to be simplified. That's your mentality, your ideology, as it were, of anti-fragile. Why have complicated stuff with other systems supporting it? Why have an electronic, computerized braking system? You're just asking for it there. It needs to be straight up mechanical and foolproof. It's not difficult to do. I can do it. Tell you what, I'm going to offer a service here. If you get a group of people, I'm going to start putting this on platforms and advertising it. If you got a group of people that wants to go in and buy a bunch of property, whether it's new property, raw property, waste sites, industrial, abandoned property, an old abandoned gravel pit, like I said, I know people that have done that. That's optimal if you can get that. But you get a bunch of people together, you pool your resources, you buy a place, and then you got to start working on the regulations. You need to talk to the local authorities, and you need to find out how you can go in there and build what you want and get rid of the stuff or comply with what they have, whatever is easiest. Uncle Buildy can be consulted on designing the whole community with the correct effect of what you want. I'll have a questionnaire I'll put together for you to give me all the information on it. What kind of soil type you got? Is it limestone? Is it caliche? Is it just topsoil? Is it sandy clay? Whatever. Soil samples maybe even. You might want to take some pictures and do some tests. Put stuff in a jar, shake it up and see how it settles out. Take a picture of it. You give Uncle Buildy all the information. The rainfall, the average rainfall for the year, the average wind for the year, the direction of the wind, your latitude, so we can figure out the sun angles, your slope, how much grade you got and which direction it falls. Uncle Buildy can design you a community where everything will optimize all that stuff. I've been studying this stuff for years. I mean years. I've been studying this stuff. I know my work. I know what I know about it, and I can come up with something, and maybe you could improve on it. It'll just be a suggestion. That's all consultants do, is make a suggestion. I would love to consult. I'm just coming up with this, so I'm kind of winging it. Kind of excited about the idea. That's why my voice is getting weird. I'd love to do that. I'd like to get paid for it. I wouldn't charge very much, just a little bit. But Uncle Buildy can be a consultant along these lines, and it'll save you money, and you'll be glad you did it. All this information, I'll put together a questionnaire or survey, and we'll figure out, your water table, whether or not you can use the water, if it's good water, or it can be filtered if it's not. But a lot of times, if you got a squirrely water table that drops real fast, they have regulations where you can't have wells or something. That's understandable. But most places you can do pretty good just on rainwater. You just need a lot of storage. The earthship communities in New Mexico, some of those places where they got earthships, they're going totally on rainwater, and they're running greenhouses and meeting all their needs with surplus. It works beautiful, and I'm talking about 10 inches of rainfall a year. 10. This place here doesn't get much. We got like 17 inches right here in Kirch a year. I looked it up. And it's all in the summertime, or excuse me, it's all in the wintertime. It's tropical. You have dry season, wet season. Dry season, you get nothing. So Sevastopol's that way too. Most of Crimea, I think, is. It just doesn't rain at all in summer. Very rare. All the rain comes in the fall, spring, and winter, and some snow. But you can collect rainwater and harvest it. You have to have a huge cistern. It's best if it's underground, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes it could be banked around houses as for thermal mass to keep it cool in the summer and warm in the winter. Earthship designs. There's easier ways of doing it than pounding tires too. That's kind of a 70s thing. So we get rid of tires for the environment, and they're free. Well, there's other ways of doing that are easier, more efficient. It's hard to mechanize pounding tires. It's been done, but there's better ways. Anyway, Uncle Buildy and consult ways, and he can do it remotely. It's best if I come out to the site, but if you give me enough information, I'll design something for it. I'll consult and tell you what you can do. Or if you want full tilt design, you can have houses in such a way where they accentuate each other, and shops, your common areas that everybody can use, your parks, your playgrounds, a child care place where the women can get together and keep the little kiddos occupied and take care of them all day, cooking areas. Everybody's out working. It's nice if the women folk get together and cook for them, and yeah, it's great to live communally like that. But if you design it right, it's easier and cheaper. You can do it using the materials on the site. Let me see. I wrote something down that I like as far as what we would call building regulations. You could have a charter with your own regulations. If you just keep the county or whatever, if it's incorporated, then you're in trouble. You need to get it on unincorporated land, or if you're under whatever jurisdictions you're under, you got to meet with those people. You got to hammer things out and see what kind of options you got. And I can't tell you online, I can't tell you in a video, you've got a lot of options that you might not know about. Most of these people are freaking idiots, and most of them are criminals. Most of them are dirty. You know, you kind of know where I'm going with this. I'm not going to tell you here how to do it, but there's other ways of influencing them than what you normally do politically. Politically, they won't freaking budge because that's money out of their pocket. There's other ways to convince them of going along with your program, and that might be easier than replacing them in some cases. But you got to think outside the box. They sure as hell don't go by the law. They make it up as they go along. You got to start fighting them, and you better use everything that you got, every resource that you got to do it. Anyway, your own bylaws, your own regulations should put safety first, but not this maniacal safety at all costs crap either. You have to have people have dignity, and people have the right to experiment. They have the right to fail. They just don't have the right to build something that'll blow up and kill the whole community, okay? You got that to think of. Air compressors and air tanks and stuff like that. I love that stuff. But I understand it can make people nervous, and you got to be real careful about where you place things and how you do it, how you control it, how you foil it, how you break it, what kind of, if you do have something that's even possibly come apart centrifugally like a prop, you should make it where it won't damage things. It's lightweight material. It's a trade-off. Anyway, your restrictions, your regulations, your ideology as it is about your community should be a thoughtful expression of the efficient use of on-site resources, attributes, and materials on the land that facilitate a sustainable, comfortable, self-sufficient, and productive life. You can arrange things where it can be freaking beautiful. You wouldn't believe the elegance and efficiency that you can have in a little community, a little homestead community, using the resources of your land. Has it got a lot of slope? You can use gravity to your advantage, where you're not always running heavy stuff uphill, you're running downhill. You know, you can use your water flow with your cisterns and maybe a tower and gravity feed circulation, air power to pump it constantly. You can have fountains. It's aerating the water as it's going down through a beautiful fountain inside your house that cools things. There's a million things you can do. Air conditioning can be taken off out of the cistern easily with tubing. There's a million. I got a million of them. I thought all this stuff out for years. I'll be a consultant, and I'll be a designer if you like. That's what I really like doing, and I'm good at it. And I'm not shilling for corporations and selling you stuff either. I prefer you don't buy anything from these people. Nothing! You can make it all yourself, and it's going to be better. It's not made out of Chinesium by slave labor, and it doesn't have all these fragile systems in it that other people control. Yeah. Think about it. It's a beautiful thing. Let me read my notes again and see what else I want to throw into this video if the battery and memory are so inclined to indulge me in this. If you get to define your own codes, which you should, they should only address basic safety and health issues. They should never dictate what technology you use, what materials you use, what form it takes. They should never contradict cultural considerations and aesthetic considerations. Now, you have a group of people that all love Gothic architecture and they want to lock everything into making the community like that. Yeah, that's good and fine. It's something you agreed on as a community, but it's not universal. You want to make all pointy roofs and vaults and stuff, and then somebody joins up and comes along and wants to build something ultra modern. Well, it's kind of a botch on it, isn't it? It kind of spoils the atmosphere. Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes you need a little contrast to point out the elegance of something. I don't know. Just a thought. I'm just talking about aesthetics here. Government should never dictate aesthetics to people. Local Yeah, do that. That's a culture. Aesthetics are part of culture. They're not part of nation. It depends on how you define nation, but it should be localized. Anyway, you're experimenting. Okay, I've built things, fabricated machines. You get ideas, you work them out, you look everything up, you look at your materials load stresses, material specifications. You know, you can check all that engineering stuff. You can do it intuitively usually. It just depends on what you're doing. If you're manufacturing something that has to be cheap and light, then you got to see what you can get away with. But if you're making a one-off, you can make a heirloom quality. That's what it is. Intuitive. I know this isn't going to break. It's a freaking 1/4 inch thick. The ones they sell, you know, that they make at the factory are only like 1 millimeter. This will work. Yeah, it's overkill. Yeah, it's an added expense, but it's for something that'll last generations and not have to be thrown away in a couple of months. You know, that's the mentality of the way you do things, and you get to do a little R&D. I start making something after very carefully planning it out, and sometimes it's starting to take shape and I get a better idea. I want to change something. Well, your regulations don't let you do that. I've been places where you could submit your own design, but then they lock you into it and you can't vary from it at all under any circumstances. That's stupid. When you're building something as complex as a homestead, you're going to get better ideas and see improvements once it starts to take shape. And you just change something a little bit, you want to tweak something, you want to change something, you should have the right to do that without getting somebody's permission. Inspection after you're done with it to make sure nothing's going to fall apart. That's all you freaking need. If there's some sort of structures that are going to be hidden and not seen after the fact, after it's built, you know, I don't even see any need for that, really. That's all banker stuff. You know, if you build a foundation that might eventually start sinking on one end and you have to repair it later, that's your business. What business is it theirs? To make sure you do it right. For the banks, it's always for the banks. It's got to be standard, because the banks plan on getting a hold of your property someday. You know, it's their system. They finance it, somebody buys it, and then they repossess it, and they want it to be under certain maximum profit circumstances for them to resell it. They don't get to do that in my world. It's just gone way too far. Anyway, just basic safety concerns should be addressed. Like I was talking about the windmill. And don't let anybody build something that's going to collapse. People have done that. People get bright ideas. Oh, let's get PVC because it's so cheap, and we'll stick a piece of rebar in it and fill it with concrete and then bend it, and that'll be our roof. Never been done before. Well, somebody did that back, I think it's in the early 70s, and he built a dome like that, and it collapsed in a wind. Wasn't good. I think it killed him, if I remember correctly. That's not proof that you shouldn't experiment. You should experiment, but I wouldn't, you know, if it's really sketchy, you probably don't want to sleep in it during a windstorm. That was his decision. The man had dignity, respects. They don't have the right to keep you from failing, okay? They don't. It's not any of their freaking business. Human dignity is worth more than human safety. Sorry, but that's just true. If people that don't believe that, well, those are the people that become your bureaucrats and regulators, isn't it? And treat you like children and to forbid you from doing anything. I say they haven't got the right to do that. And you should too. Or you're going to be very unhappy talking and listening to Uncle Bildy. It's R&D. You should be able to R&D. You should be able to do your own research and development. You should do your own labs. It's none of their business. They've captured that. They've made it the venue only of corporations. They get to research materials. You know why? So they can patent them, and they can forbid some with their zoning regulations and their building regulations, and then they can sell the ones that they approved. And they gear them toward being as cheap as possible to manufacture and as expensive as possible to sell. By being useful, they could jack the price up. And then they could lock you in and make you use them. That's the system. That's the system we got to break. And we can break it. There's hope. The opportunity's coming up with this collapse. We got to be ready. We got to be poised. You don't sit around watching Netflix. Get out and do something, damn it. You do your own research. Because the regulations are made by engineers that I work with engineers all my life. I don't have a whole hell of a lot of respect for them, to tell you the truth. Engineers and regulators, they're lazy. They don't want to a lot of them aren't really very good. A lot of them aren't very bright. Actually, a lot of them are really rather dull, even on mechanical things. I've seen so many mechanical engineers that I couldn't make understand something simple right in front of them. They can't understand combinations of things like a composite structure. They don't like that. They want everything to be monolithic because it's easier to write the control figures down for. They don't want you building houses out of composites. I don't mean composite materials that you buy from corporations. I mean a composite structure where there's infill between beams helping to support the top load. And the beams can be smaller when you have infill helping. No, it's all got to be figured separately. If you don't have beams, the infill has to be this certain strength, compressive strength. The beams have to be this certain compressive strength, as though they're holding it all by themselves. But something like a straw bale house, you have a composite. If you can build it like a composite, where they share the load, and it works. They don't like that stuff. They don't want to see stuff that's a combination, load sharing two different materials. They want it to be all real easy to figure out. That's where intuition come in. Engineers don't like intuition. They refuse to accept it. And it's not going to collapse anyway. It's not going to kill anybody. So why do they have the right to forbid it? Cars and machines use composite structurally. I don't know exactly how to term this. A unibody car doesn't have a frame. The structure itself is shaped and designed and has the proper materials, so you have a minimal amount of materials that cause it to have structural integrity. Now, if they had building zoning regulation and building inspectors that had authority over the car industry, you'd still be driving around in Model A's. They wouldn't allow anything to move. They don't want these sort of structures that have, let's see, it's like in the concrete business, it's a thin shell architecture. The shape itself lends strength to it rather than the material. Something that's convex, something that's spherical, something that's like a dome, something that has compound curves. It can be really thin, weak material and still carry a bigger load than something that's straight and really heavy material. You get where I'm saying about this. Vehicles went to unibody and nobody stopped them because, well, it's corporations. They did the R&D and found out they can make very, very much lighter, cheaper cars by doing away with the frame, by integrating it into the body. And then the frame can be really light and flimsy because the roof and the door frames are holding it together. They're helping hold it together. It's a composite structure. I've designed straw bale arches and vaults and domes that you can build with really cheap materials. I wouldn't recommend it. There's better ways of doing stuff than that. But that are a composite structure, a monocoque. I see it here, these houses they built right after the war, unskilled people usually, peasants, soldiers. After World War II, the Great Patriotic War, these Russians had to build a lot of housing and they had to build a lot of collective farms, they had to build a lot of buildings, and they had to do it real quick with the rubble that's laying around, and they didn't have the resources to do anything they wanted. And I've seen some of these cottages out in the country. They're piles of rubble held together with plaster and wallpaper. Not optimal, but they were built 70 years ago and they're still here 60, 70 years ago. They're all right. You got to take care of them. You got to plaster them regularly. But you go tearing into it and trying to improve it and try to go down to the core and it is liable to fall apart. But monocoque structures do work with stones and plaster. It's been done. A lot of the fencing around here is done like that, and it's got to be maintained. The Native Americans in Taos, New Mexico have houses made out of cob, basically mud, adobe. It's held together. It's plastered every year. They get fresh mud plaster and put on every year, every couple of years. It's a community effort. You plaster the house. Oh, time to plaster the house. Have a party. It's built into your culture. It's a ritual. If it's not done, the place will disintegrate. But they have places that have been continuously occupied for over 1,000 years there. Building inspectors, oh, that's separate. That's history. Oh, no, we don't let you do it. No, you don't build something like that has to do that. You have to buy from the corporations. You have to get a loan at the bank. You have to buy a spec house. What happens to a spec house when you abandon it? I've seen spec houses that have been abandoned for like 10 years in the backwoods around Houston, where you got all this humidity and mold and wood roaches and termites. It's gone. It's starting to collapse after 10 years. There's abandoned cob houses in England that the roof has been gone from, and the rain's going on it, and the weather and the freezing, and yet the walls, you can still easily repair them and put a new roof on it and move into it. But it's not allowed. Yeah, you see what my points I'm making with this. I don't want to belabor the point, but I find this stuff exciting. You could build a house. If I own this property right here, this little ridge, I could use the materials here to build a comfortable place. Yeah, I could do that. There'd be a process. There'd be certain things you'd have to build first in order to get the things and process the things that you make for later use. You'd have to dig a pit. There's so much clay in this soil. It's fantastic. A few mechanisms that help. A garden tiller can mix cob soil very easily. Straw, the correct amount of sand and clay, you churn it up, you wet it, you get it the right consistency, and you just start piling it up and making walls out of it, and you got a cob house. You got to put it on a good foundation, get it up off the ground, then you got to put a really good roof on it with lots of overhang, and if it's maintained, it'll last hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's cool on the inside in summer. You can make it warm on the inside in winter. It's a beautiful thing. Why isn't that done? It's super cheap. Why isn't it done? I don't know. Corporations? Regulatory capture? You have the right to build these things, and you're going to have to do it soon, but they're not going to want to let you do that. They're going to want you to go to camps and be dependent, and then they decide you're too much trouble and they don't have the resources, and so they just do away with you. That's the way it works. This happens before. It's happened several times before, and they're gearing up for it again. You better fight. You better get ready to fight. Anyway, let me look at my notes again. There are red flags. When you see regulations and codes and whatnot, there are red flags where you can see it's supporting a parasite class that has power over you, that treats you like you're a stupid little kid, and they get to stop you from doing things and make you do other things. That's a red flag. You got bad regulation. You need to sniff these things out. There should probably be regulations on the regulations. That's a good start. That would be an overarching principle. That would be a tool that you could use to unwind a lot of this stuff and stand up for your rights. Think about that. Form an organization where you have the right to review regulations and see, this seems to be designed to profit an industry. Yeah, this seems to be designed to make somebody have access to my money. If I want to do anything, I have to go through them. Is that a good regulation? No, you need to get rid of it on that basis. That'd get rid of an awful lot of them. I told the story about the regulations in Canyon City, Colorado, where they demanded that you have so many parking spaces to have a business, even if there wasn't enough room to have those parking spaces. That's okay. Village board members got a bunch of parking spaces out on the edge of town they'll rent to you so you can comply for 50-year leases. Those people ought to be locked up in jail. I don't know if they're still doing it. They were doing it when I was there, trying to, run a business. When was that? Early 2000s, very early 2000s. But there's that kind of stuff everywhere, and that's what you got to contend with. It's like shooting fish in the barrel to point out the moral inconsistency and malfeasance behind this stuff and these people. It needs to be exposed. It needs to be trumpeted from the highest hill. That's the first step. And then you need to put something together that everybody can get on board with and do surveys and beat on doors. And don't knock on their relatives' doors. They're the only ones that won't sign up for it. But to make an association to make regulators of regulation to make sure the regulation's clean. It's not for somebody's profit or some self-perpetuating mindless bureaucracy of parasites, because that's what they are. They're parasites. I'm using ugly language. This is very bad. This is misinformation. This is hate speech, right? Come on. It's a scam. Anyway, I hope that this has been beneficial. I probably left some things out. Uncle Bildy signing out. I gotta flesh out all the details. I'm not signing out. Okay, forget that. I gotta flesh out all the details of these systems, and I want to consult. I can do this online. It could be beneficial. Yeah, that's an idea. I'll put together forms. So if you find some land, you can list all your attributes. You can put together associations. You can start your own village, and you could have a real good start on what order to build things in, where you can build it, where it's convenient and comfortable for you to build it, and you build things that you don't have to tear down, that you can build on that, and it'll help you build all the other things you need, and put together a system that optimizes everything, even gravity and sunlight and the water table, or if you can't use that, the rainwater, or both. Why not? You can water your plants with rainwater and go easy on the underground water. It's a beautiful thing. Uncle Bildy has all the answers on all this stuff, or at least suggestions. Please comment. And spread this far and wide. Spread it. Share. Please share. Now, Uncle Bildy signing out.